Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Eward Driehuis, CRO of SecureLink, and give it up for Eward.
This kind of reminds me of my first RSA talk. There were even less people there, but hey ho, that's what you get if you call your Twitter handle Brakende Lama. Who's that guy? Where he's from? Like Edward? No, it's not Edward. It's Eward. Yeah, okay. So we'll go to that cloud talk then. But it's pretty intimate, isn't it? So yeah, thank you for joining. I hope we're gonna have some fun. Any of you guys were here last year, by any chance? Yeah. I've bad news. I've become a little bit less obsessed with the Russians. So yeah, less naked Russians in my presentation today. More Chinese though. Yay! And Frenchmen as well. Yay! What do the French know about cyber? I can already cliffhanger. Not a lot. Yeah, so we'll get there. We'll get there. I work in one of the most amazing companies in the world, and despite all of our efforts, we let 21,000 attacks bypass our defenses in 2018. What I want to do is I want to share the lessons I learned from that with you. Isn't that nice? And obviously, it's one of those old paradigms, isn't it? If you're going to get hit a lot, if you protect enough perimeter, if you will, then you will see a lot. And I kind of inventoried it and spotted 3 trends that I think might be interesting, might not be, whatever you want, guys. Do with it what you like. So I work at SecureLink with more than 700 colleagues. We have 1,300 customers, which is amazing to me. And from our 7 cyber defense centers, it's called, we process 10 trillion logs per year. And this morning, I was talking to a class of students in the Netherlands, from a university. I asked them, how many zeros is that? First on, who knows? How many zeros is 10 trillion? Yeah, 13. Oh, sorry, out of mate. It's not my mate anyway. I thought it was a good example set by you. I was actually, myself, I was a little bit surprised that people were hesitating with the answer. I thought, like 10 trillion, that's 13, right? Isn't it? So, it doesn't really matter. I was surprised, but that's a lot of data where we process. Some of that data is interesting. Most of it is not. So it's my job to get the interesting data out of that 10 trillion stuff, non-interesting data. And well, that's how I do talks about that. That's called research. So, but as you know, I still have that fixation. This is where I come from. Spent 10 years of my life, studying cybercrime. And this is where you meet these people. I want to be totally fair. The lady is only there for diversity purposes. She's innocent, right? She's not a crook. All the others are. So these are the 3 bad guys and an innocent lady who happens to stand next to Bogachev. The reason why I want to go into this for just 5 minutes, I promise, it's not going to be more, just 5 minutes. Please allow me. I spent 10 years of my life here. I just want to mention the Russians because they are the great innovators that started this all. I've talked about this many times before. The guy Bogachev there to the top, he had all these friends. They were doing drugs, prostitution, arms dealing, human trafficking, but he was a programmer, so he said, how can I help my entrepreneurial friends with my skills? So he programmed a thingy called Zeus, which was pretty darn nifty, because you can say whatever you want about this guy, but he understood one thing. Russian criminals are no rocket scientists. No, so he needed to create something that they could use easily. And they used that specifically to target Western banks. They did fairly straightforward attacks like web injects, all that kind of stuff. It's no longer a problem today. All that stuff is now being absorbed in big Hadoop data lakes by the banks. And they're not even bothered about web injects anymore. But that was the stuff back in the day. And these other guys, they were pretty much guys that say, oh, if he can make money that way, we're going to do that as well. And they started this economy. It's called the underground, the cybercrime economy. Mainly consisted of, Russian, or let's say a little bit farther east than Poland and farther west than China. That's what we're talking about pretty much. They started all of this stuff. And like I said, I talk about this a lot. I'm going to do it very short now. The short of the gist of the story is no one cared. No one. No one. I happened to be working in this space back then, but no one cared. For a very, very simple reason, is that all the money that was defrauded from us was reimbursed by the banks. Amazing, huh? It didn't matter if you were called up by a Russian who with a fat Russian accent, would ask you for your password and then said, yeah, there's this code coming in on your phone, give it to me too. And you gave it to him, and he did a fraudulent transaction, and the banks would still reimburse your money. That's how awesome these banks were. And if you have an idea why they were so gracious towards our stupid mistakes? Very simple reason. Right now, all the blue suits are calling it digital transformation. But back then, it meant that the banks were closing down all the brick and mortar offices and opening online channels. And it wasn't the loss, because in the heydays, 2011, 2012, you know how much money was stolen from the whole of the Netherlands, from all the banks combined, for example. It was about 42 million euros. You know how much that is for a bank? Yes, it's nothing. Mate is still empty. So, that wasn't the issue. Was they wanted to maintain trust in the channels. That was it. Trust in the channels. That's what it was all about. That's why these guys started cybersecurity as an industry. So we need to thank the banks for that. And the rest of us, with a 7-year lag, we started waking up. That's how I see it. I can talk for 4 more hours about this one circle. I promise you I won't do it. But if you want to hear some juicy stories, for example, how Bogachev betrayed this guy, royally screwed him over, and hence he got arrested in Costa Rica, and he didn't. He became a colonel in the GRU. If you want to know all of those stories, hit me up at the bar. We'll have some fun. It's not what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to fast forward 7 years. This brainiac over here, standing to the next diversity lady, thought, I'm going to create something else. I'm going to use my infrastructure to do something new. And we're going to call it ransomware. Now, ransomware was not new. Another question for Club Mate. How old is the oldest known ransomware? Any of you know? I'm looking at the grumpy hackers here. We're talking about the oldest crypto ransomware. The oldest known crypto ransomware. Yeah, let me just enlighten you. It's 1989. The AIDS virus. I kid you not. So the concept was not new. But that's why this guy's such a big innovator. As with Apple, Gorilla Glass wasn't new, rounded corners weren't new, Wi-Fi wasn't new, and 2G wasn't new as well. But they put it all together in this wonderful device, and they created the iPhone. Now, this guy dusted off that old crypto ransomware extortion method, combined it with the already pre-existing botnets that he had built with Game Over Zeus, and off he went. And what happened? Well, not a lot, really. About 500,000 victims, 1.3% paid, the rest of them lost their files. You all know the stories. But the important thing is the risk moved from just the banks to everyone. So it was now a global problem. Not a big problem, but this was when the CISOs of the world, our bosses, woke up. Or when your company started to think, hey, maybe we should hire a CISO. And this is when all the models got built, all the resilience model, all the cybercrime resilience models got built. So for the majority of us, this is where we started defending us. Fast forward 4 years ago. Now, so again, there's another thing I'm not allowed to talk about anymore, except for the Russians. Because it's so chewed out. It's like old gum without any flavor anymore. But let's just say 2017 was an amazing year because we could talk about these 2 ransomware attacks that were so bad, and it was so easy that year. To be in the cybersecurity industry, you just said, yeah, why should I buy your stuff? Well, I want to cry. Yeah, okay, I'll buy. Why should I buy your stuff? Well, NotPetya, Maersk, 300 million damage. Yeah, bring it over. And it was easy. Last year didn't have that. But one of the most important takeaways from those attacks, in my mind, something that most of the people kind of ignored or forgot, was obviously that not one of the victims of both attacks who paid their ransom got their files back. That's interesting, huh? Because we know for a fact that ransomware is actually hard work. It's actually hard. It's a huge process. When you infect someone, you need to store a unique identifier to identify that bot. You need to match it in a table or whatever to the private key that you use for encrypting the files. Then you need to wait for the transaction in Bitcoin coming in and match it with that unique identifier, take that private key, add a little decryptor tool in a package, put it back to the victim. It's a lot of work. And the important thing is, you need to do it fast. Because if you don't do it fast, your customers will say, oh, I don't trust these criminals. I pay them, I still don't have my files back. And you'll get bad press, bad marketing, and no one will pay anymore. That happened here as well. You all know the story. I'm quite passionate about it because that's when we understood maybe they're not the worst criminals in the world. Maybe they have ulterior motives. And of course they did. It was about the destruction. When 1.3% pays, what happens to the other 98.7%? They get screwed. They get destruction, some kind of losses, either emotionally, physically, monetary, operational losses. It's bad. And that brings us to 2019. And this was a short history of cyber threats. Thank you. Yeah. But this is where we start our story. Because I wouldn't be much of a chief research officer if I didn't engage in a bit of research, now would I? As one very wise person said to me, without data, you're just a guy with an opinion. I agree. This is my opinion on this data. What we saw is, we have all these tools in place, won't bother you with all of that stuff, but like 250,000 times in last year, they said to me, hey, hi, it's me, the AI, or hey, hi, it's me, the rule set, or hey, it's me, the behavioral stuff, or whatever the crap it is. Something's interesting is going on here. Would you care to take a look, human? So we did that, and 21 times we saw something that makes our neck hairs stand up a little bit. So that's where we are. And then the second very important thing here is that when we kind of classify those incidents, we classify them in multiple ways, but primarily everyone's interested, well, is it malware, or is it just some bad stuff? Is it an anomaly? Is it social engineering? Is the policy breach? What the heck is going on? So when we look at this is where it gets interesting, because you see the layering in the attacks, and you can actually map kind of maturity to the customers and to the verticals. Because, for example, social engineering is looking at behavior. So imagine a bad guy wants to own your network. First thing he does is send a phishing email or spear phishing email, right? That's the first thing. So your security stuff needs to pick that email up. Now, usually it doesn't. Most of us don't even have any kind of sane email security that will pick up this kind of spear phishing email. So it will just bypass that. So we will click the link, and the malware will then embed itself on the computer. It's called persistence, if you believe stuff like the MITRE ATT&CK framework and stuff like that. Persistence. But if you're, let's say, a nation-state operator, you're not going to use generic malware or a known rat or whatever the crap. You're not even using behavioral characteristics in your executable that would match any kind of sane next generation endpoint security. Will just bypass that as well. So then you're on the PC. You can start looking around and see, this area I only find some very nasty pictures of his wife and his kids. I need to do lateral movement to get to my target. And that's your next chance to pick all of this stuff up, and that's how that works. We're lucky to pick it up in the first go at the click. When the person sitting behind the PC is doing the click on something that he shouldn't. And people are always saying, yeah, but people are so stupid. They constantly click on links and yada yada yada. And I'm like, yeah, but listen, links are designed to be clicked. That's the user experience. So you're now saying to me that I shouldn't click links. Why have we created email programs with links then? So I think it's stupid. So you should have all those safety nets behind it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Don't rely on your people of all controls to be aware. I would recommend awareness is the last thing you do after you do all the rest. So yeah. So this is what we're seeing. Yes, ransomware. You know what I told you already? Ransomware is a bitch of a process. It is way more work than people think. And all these rookie criminals think that they can just buy themselves a generic attack for $10,000 and become rich. It's just not true. It's a lot of work, you know. And so when they started thinking and brainstorming, this is what they do, these criminals, would there be easier ways to get ourselves these bitcoins? And then, you know, people are starting thinking, how does Bitcoin even work? What's, you know, blockchain was integrity calculations, you know, mining. So there might be a way that we would earn money by leveraging all these infections without doing all the customer interactions. That would be fantastic. Let's do that. You know, we call it cryptojacking, or, you know, let the industry just do that for us. And in the beginning, in January, indeed, we see cryptojacking overtaking ransomware as the #1 biggest threat. Isn't that amazing? You know, these criminals finally found a way to leverage our CPU power to make some money without our files being destroyed. You know, C-levels don't care about this stuff. So I thought, this is good. Let ransomware just die out, and we'll see how we deal with that cryptojacking later. So, you know, when we moved into 2018, several things happened, though. You know, we saw cryptojacking steadily declining. And in the middle of the year, in June, July, you know, ransomware was back up. And by the end of the year, cryptojacking was virtually down to zero. Now, the one thing you should understand is, when I know full well that, for example, McAfee says, no, cryptojacking is the biggest threat right now, the biggest threat in 2018. Well, yeah, that might be if you put like 500 honeypots on the internet and you just catch everything that flies by, but it's actually not that hard to stop. So if you look on the inside of the firewall, you know, you see different stuff. We see a virtual decline to zero of cryptojacking because it's just easy to stop. And there might be one second reason why cryptojacking is not as popular as it was. You know, I guess one of you can take a guess as to what it is. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You know, January, $20,000 for your Bitcoin. December, 2.5. Oh, whoopsie. So for the same efforts, I'm now going to get 85% less returns. I didn't become a criminal to do this. So yeah, ransomware is still firmly the #1 rookie lure. You know, rookie criminals will start their careers doing ransomware. What happens? I know there's a typo here. This was in July. You know, as a CRO, what you do is you enjoy some downtime by actually stop doing presentations and stuff and actually dig into some numbers. And then I got a phone call. And the phone call said, hey, listen, we kind of saw an unknown binary causing ransomware infections, and it was it had a Locky ransom node, and the extension was Locky as well. So you do what every CRO says. I put down my pina colada and I said, well, what did VirusTotal say? He said, well, unknowns. Oh, okay, so let's go to work. Because we were like, oh my God, if Locky is back, that would be very cool. That would be good marketing for SecureLink. What happens? But you can already see from, let's say, this Tor website, you know, where you do your business with the blatant typo on it, that might not be the most awesome thing ever since the notorious Locky. All of you know Locky, right? Locky is ransomware. Let's say if CryptoLocker was the granddaddy of ransomware, then Locky is the father, I would say. You know, Gantt crap. It doesn't really matter. It's just tools, you know, as we will see later. But, you know, Locky seemed to return, and Locky was very dangerous because it was dropped in the beginning by Dridex malware. So, you know, malware loads other malwares to do other stuff. It could be anything from ransomware to espionage and all that stuff. And the Dridex guys used to load Locky for their ransomware campaigns. And Dridex, of course, spun off of Game Over Zeus, which was the gang of that bald gentleman with the diversity lady in his arm. So, yeah, full circle there. So a handful of infections, not that much, you know. Unknown binary executable, 7.4, what? 7.4 megabytes? Did they turn on all the developer options while compiling or whatever? Digitally signed? What? Digitally signed? We don't see that a lot. So let's look at the certificate. Oh, hey, certificate seen. La crème. Looks pretty darn official. The benefit of having a digitally signed executable is that Windows will, run it, for example, if you have like a system administrator like most of us have. So we looked at La Crème, and it was a British company, and the company looked kind of bankrupt. So this was most definitely a stolen certificate. But, La Crème, 7.4 megabytes, what? This is what happened. There was this, see the message there? There's like, I don't have the message, the ransom message, but it was in English and French. So it turned out to be a French guy. And the French guy thought, what everyone thinks. Go to the story we just heard, I can create a ransomware. It's not that freaking difficult. I know Python. So he wrote ransomware in Python. And then he said, okay, so now I just need to execute my Python. Oh, hey, the Py installer, we're going to do that. Yeah, so Python 2.7.dll. So there you go, included. The Python interpreter was included. What is the stupidest thing ever? And we were like in summer, drinking my pina colada with the analyst. We were rolling over each other. And this is the actual source code. It's not even obfuscated or anything. It was just, you could just decompile. It was super stupid. And we were laughing and having a lot of fun. And then I got a phone call from the Metropolitan Parisian Police. We were having so much fun that we were forgetting that, and we only saw like 2 infections. And they said, yeah, so I tweeted about it, of course, because if it was the return of Locky, I wanted to be the first to tweet it out. It wasn't, okay? And she said, yeah, I saw your tweet on Locky, and do you have more information I would like to report? Because there are several thousand infections in France. So even when this stuff is funny, it isn't funny. That's the horrible thing. Rookie criminals creating their own freaking ransomware in Python and infecting thousands. What kind of a world are we living in? Horrendous. Who of you is a Dutchman? Yeah, almost everyone. So this morning I needed to explain what a herring is. This is a herring, you know the drill. I also think I explained to you guys that I grew up on a small island, right? Walcheren. It's like Zeeland. It's a peninsula, okay? I know. A peninsula is officially an island. Don't look at me like that. It's a peninsula. There's a train. I know that. But it's just a island. There's a lot of seagulls there. My mom taught me many, many wise lessons, but this is probably one of the most important ones. It's don't feed the seagulls. Because if you do, they will get cockier and cockier. Just stop feeding them and they will go away. So in Zeeland, on Walcheren, no one feeds the seagulls. I went with my son to visit his grandma and granddad. My son was eating potato chips. He had one of these chips in his hand. He saw a seagull, toss it up, swoop down, got the fry, and I smacked him over the head like... No, I didn't. I don't hit children. But I wanted to do it because you don't feed the seagulls. Right? And wouldn't this just be the solution for ransomware? If you don't pay these bastards, maybe because as we know from cryptojacking, they're not in the business of doing all this stuff and not making jack shit. They want to make money ultimately. So if we don't pay them, we stop paying them. Easy peasy, right? No. Because they invented something for that. You have the high... You can be all principled about this and say, listen, I'm going to darn well recover if it costs me 2 weeks. Screw those guys, I'm not going to pay them. Good for you. Criminals found a way, though. We'll talk about that later. Because criminals evolve. And what I talked about now, this is all rookie territory. All of it. Some of the big criminals, they have created their Netflix for attacks, and the rookie criminals hire their ready-to-go attacks. Only the big criminals are making money here. All the rookies are just bumbling about and pretending like, yay! It's not working. Right? The big criminals evolve. I think I don't need to explain to you, you can get as much infected machines as you want. If you send out 1 million spam emails, you will get 10,000 infections. I don't know, maybe 5,000. If you need a few thousand more, just another, create a watering hole here and there, you will always get your infections. And I think already told some of you before, like, they are doing big data on us, and the first thing that they're going to find out is, okay, am I connected to an AD? Is this PC, does it have a number in it? Is it higher than 100? Are we running Oracle processors? Are we doing this? Is that? Great, we're in a big enterprise. Splice the bot off, put it apart, and the rest of all, oh, so this is a nobody. Are we seeing pictures of ugly wives and kids? Cool, we're just going to steal their credit cards, do maybe some retail fraud, or slap ransomware on them. The mining stuff, they hardly do that anymore. And then the fun starts, because they're now in an enterprise. And in the enterprise, they are starting to get creative. Really, they do. One of the less creative attacks I've seen, if they're in an enterprise doing lateral movement to the database farm. Because a database farm will actually generate enough CPU power for you to actually make a little bit of money using cryptojacking. So yeah, they can do that. We've seen that. Oh, it's horrendous. The CEO panically calls the police. I've been hacked! What's the damage, sir? Whoa, it's €5.50 in electricity. Oh yeah, that's never going to be the issue. But what they do is look for value, steal or extort the value or misuse the value. And this is the one attack that we've seen last year that I found the most interesting. These guys went ahead and looked for one single file on that B2B company's network. The file was the invoice template. They found it. You're smart. Usually I need to say they changed one little field in that invoice template. I don't need to. They changed the bank account number and they move out. Really happened. I am not crapping you. I know for a fact that that company has went to the police and they said, yeah, listen, something horrendous happened, all these fake invoices, and who sent these invoices? No, well, we did, but no, it's not a good story. It's not a good story for the police. But likely they won't find it. And here is where we get to toss our principles aside. I want to discuss the first ethical question of the evening with you. Right? They quietly enter the network, look for value, they can't find the value. What they can find is your online backup. Now, I started my career changing tapes. I was what's called an operator. I even worked in a company called Operator Group Delft. I'm damn proud of it as well. Go OGD. Right? And I now say to all these people, look at your smart online backup. Did you even have an offline backup? Well, if you don't, they're just going to destroy all of your online backups. They're going to take their time for it as well. And then when recovery is near impossible, then they're going to slap the ransom on your network. And what are you going to do then? Are you going to be principled and stand there, take it like a man, and send away 2,000 colleagues who don't have a job anymore? As an entrepreneur, you might be inclined to do it, but imagine all those people who have wives and mortgages, kids, dreams, and all that stuff. So, and the scary thing is if you today buy cyber insurance, the first thing the cyber insurer sets aside for you is a bunch of bitcoins. Because if you call them up that I've been owned, they're going to go in, they're going to pay. That's what they're going to do. They just want to recover as fast as possible. Right? I know there's many incident response teams. If you call them up and you tell them, yeah, ransom, oh, yeah, okay. They pick up their buckets with their bitcoins and they're going to walk in your network. They're going to look if by any chance it's if it's a ransomware with a vulnerability, otherwise they're going to pay. Yeah. So they're feeding the seagulls. So this problem's not going to stop, is it, my friends? And I don't feel easy about that stuff. I'm kind of accepting, but you can still sense some anger in me. because I know what will happen if you start feeding the seagulls. They will steal your herring. Yes, they will. You're making it worse for all the rest of us. You know who you are. So, what about the cops? How much time do we have? Woo! Only halfway. Well, that means maybe I can tell this story, although some of you might heard it, Obviously, especially in the beginning, this was true. I go back to my fixation. It started to the east of Poland, to the west of China, right? All those criminals, they knew a few rules. One of the rules is you don't go on holiday to Costa Rica. You know why, right? Because you get apprehended by the FBI, who have an extradition treaty with the US, and you're toast. So you don't do that. You stay behind the border. But if you stay there, you can pretty much do what you want. And the cops know this, of course. But if you make someone enough angry, if you rob enough countries, enough businesses, the FBI will take notice. And one of the most amazing actions that they ever did, and back when I was working at Fox IT, I was on the sidelines witnessing some of this stuff, is that they went after Game Over Zeus. The same very Bogachev, I said his name again, promise not to do it, but they went after them. How did they do that? They didn't send in a SWAT team, because you know that Russia is a nuclear power, right? So that's why you don't send in SWAT teams, very easy. By the way, you don't do that to Belgium either, or you just do it very covertly, but you don't do that to Russia. So you can't. So what they could send in was a UPS guy with a big brown bubbly envelope. He rang Bogachev's bell, and Bogachev opened, and he got the envelope, and Bogachev opened the envelope, and in it was a complete file of his life, his assets, his friends, his phone history, his jabber friends, his mortgage bills, his insurance, everything was in there. On top was a yellow post-it that said, "Greetings from your friends at the FBI." And half of this is like filled in with a little bit of creativity, okay? So I know but just give me this. It's just a cool story. So he went to the FBI's homepage immediately, and he saw there was the FBI's #1 most wanted, 2 million prize on his head. He panicked completely, and in the next 48 hours frantically destroyed his own infrastructure. And then the FBI was a little bit lucky, because in his group of 50, there was little trust, because they were working with both Russians and Ukrainians in one team. Now, have you followed geopolitics in the last years? Don't need to say more, right? So it so happened to be the sole key that he held in his pocket. So he went away, orphaned all the bots, destroyed his infrastructure, score one for the FBI. Game Over Zeus was essentially crippled and disabled. It was fantastic. And we were celebrating for 3 months, because then the group was like, "Where's Yevgeny? I don't know where he is. Oh, screw it. We'll just create new malware. You have that source code? Yeah, I have it. Okay, so we'll use the same. Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, good. 2 new groups come up, Dire and Drydex. There you go. And we now had 2 groups. And they went ahead and struck with even bigger force. And they learned how to drop new malwares. They started to talk to spies. If I don't know if this action catalyzed more nastiness, but it sure as hell correlated. So we're never going to solve this problem. Not the cops. The cops are here for one reason, and we need to commend them and support them for that. The cops need to introduce risk for the criminals. That's what they're for. If we're not introducing risk for them, everyone can do it. There needs to be some risk. So yeah, we go after everyone that's stupid enough to go on a holiday to Costa Rica, and so on and so on and so on. And we just introduce risk, but that's the best we can do. Yeah, how about the soldiers then? Maybe we should use them. Well, they are. You know what I drew here? And I thought this was interesting, and I already told you I'm a bit of a researcher in my spare time. So what I did is I downloaded a list of all the APTs that were known. And, for example, I think FireEye calls them APT 1 through 39, right? And there's others, they all have like 5 or 6. I put them all in an Excel sheet and I counted them. So there's about 21 known APTs. 2 of them are Russian. It's actually 4 hexagons, but that's an error of my designer. It's 2. 2 in Russia. 2 in Iran. 2 in North Korea. Yay, they've gone up from 1 just 2 months ago. Fantastic. APT 38, welcome to the stage. Vietnam has 1. China has 11. 11 known espionage groups that are being attributed to be liaised with the Chinese government. And they're all doing one thing and one thing only: espionage. So when I talk about this stuff, I think, it's about the time, because you might have noticed when you watch the news, there's a few tensions here and there. People are kind of talking shit about each other, and, some world leaders are not digging each other as much as they dug each other, let's say, 10, 12 years ago. So so what could be these wonderful stage motivations? Oh, and for those of you that are not in this APT world and so on, you might see that the rest of the world, including the US and the UK and Sweden, they're all grey. There's a reason why the US, with his 10,000 soldiers, is not the biggest adversary out there, and the reason is called diplomacy. We don't talk about that stuff. Right? Remember when GCHQ hacked Belgacom a few years ago in order to intercept communications with the Middle East, and it was actually spotted by them, and they send in the wolf, and they said, "Whoa, it's GCHQ." How everyone, when the entire diplomatic world was completely disrupted, right? No, it wasn't, because we don't talk about that stuff. We have a cup of tea over that. So, these are the motivations. Sowing destruction. Sowing destruction, I call it the Russian model. This is what happens if 2 enemies have completely different budgets. US's budget, on estimation, 20 times higher than Russia's budget. So, the smaller of the 2 tends to want to sow destruction, and then we analyze the stuff, and we say, "Hey, I think it's the Russians." And the Russians say, "Yeah, tough luck." They don't care if you know it's them. They want to know it, that it's them. Because it's called asymmetric warfare for a reason. What's another word for asymmetric warfare? Where the one party is super big and the other one's super small. It's called terrorism. These are terrorist tactics. That's asymmetric warfare. So anytime you see something in NotPetya, and people say, "Oh, we think it's the Russians," and the Russians say, "Yeah, tough luck." That's terrorism. So, the second one, there's another country that's even poorer than Russia. They want to be taken seriously on the world stage. Their GDP is about as big as the town of Garderen. I looked it up. It's not true, by the way, but it's just a little joke. That would be super. But it's about 100 times smaller than, let's say, Russian GDP. You wouldn't believe how small it was. It's like in the tens of millions instead of in the tens of billions. It's super small. So they don't mind if they also make a little bit of money. Hence all the SWIFT network hacking. The Bank of Bangladesh, all of that stuff. And whether you want to believe it or not, I'm on the fence, to be honest, but I only have 10 minutes left, so I won't go there. Everyone says it's them, so let's just assume it's them. They want to make money, and they've specialized in Bitcoin heists. Out of all the Bitcoin heists last year, it's estimated by some that half of the larger ones directly to the Bitcoin exchanges were done by them. And they made about $500 million. For them, that's a lot of money. For us, that's just a write-off for Mark Rutte. But for them, it's a lot. So filling budget gaps, second motivation. Third motivation, gentlemen spies. Obviously, don't need to talk to you about industrial espionage, but this is been going on for such a long time. The Chinese built their entire economy on this. And when Trump's, one of the things that I think he got right is imposing those sanctions. It's not just because their tax rules are unfair, and they are unfair. We have an office in Shanghai. I know it's unfair. Life is just unfair. Boo. The other thing is systematic espionage. We don't talk about that much, but you can bet that was on the table when they started fighting over this. So those are the three motivations. And people always ask me, Eward, hey, listen, cool story, bro. And I like the part about the seagull as well, but I'm not interesting for nation state. And I say, well, you're not probably. And that's not really the issue, is it? Because if you build your threat models today, you need to take into account that there's now three types of risk, and this is just one of the risks. It doesn't happen that often, granted. In our statistics, and someone asked me flat out, what's the statistics? And I said, well, maybe 1 in, 5,000 events is maybe nation state related that we saw, kind of. But, the impact is so high, so you want to take it into account. You can be either a target, but you can also be a victim by being in someone's supply chain. APT10, everyone's talking about them, and they move into the IT providers. Who of you works at an IT provider? So there you go. Take that away in your threat modeling, your risk modeling. They target you to get to your customers. That's what people are seeing, and that is what we are seeing. And of course, you can be collateral damage, like with the not paid, or you can be lucky. So the three types of risk, and that means that I feel like everyone is making mistakes by still thinking it's 2013 and we're still fighting malware and that kind of stuff. No, there's three risks. One thing is, it's definitely going to happen to all of you next year, is that commoditized ransomware, cryptojacking, whatever. You're not going to lose sleep over it. It's going to happen. The other thing is, one of you might have one of those advanced attacks, going after the backup or even after your invoice template. One of you, I would reckon. One of you next year is going to know someone that's going to be hit by a nation-state attack. That's how I see it. That's how I predict this. That's the difference. And there's other developments which I will, because this is mostly blue suit stuff, but still, trust. You talked about trust. I believe trust is super, super relevant, because I feel like we're trusting the wrong things and we're distrusting the wrong things. We're all trusting our supply chains. We're trusting our own people. We are trusting all the devices that we put in our networks. We are trusting our certificate authorities. As we speak, we're finalizing a piece of research on certificate authorities, because, we saw that La Creme certificate signing that. How is that trust? How is that trust? It's broken. I believe in trust as much as the next man, if it's in an interpersonal relationship. But the technical trust is completely broken. And I could talk about that for another hour. So the three takeaways. We feed the seagulls. We do this ourselves. We pay insurance and emergency response to worsen the problem for us. We do this ourselves. I know as an island dweller, we could easily stop ransomware. But yeah, right? We choose not to go bankrupt, and maybe we're right. The trust paradox, our trust issues are making this problem worse as well. And again, this is our own stuff. We need to find stuff to do it. And that's when I think about, yesterday I was talking to someone, I just wanted to put this in there. We need some radical new thinking about some of these paradigms. Risk is not necessarily becoming greater, mind you. I'm not the one going to say to you, listen, we're all going to die, this is super bad, yada, yada, yada. But risk is just different and more diverse. That's what it is. You can't detect those advanced criminals with the same endpoint protection that's going to detect that cryptojacking stuff. It's just not the way stuff works. Those nation states guys, they will bypass your behavioral, your email security, your endpoint security, and if you have no ways of picking up lateral movement, they will be home free in your network, right? So that's just new stuff. It's just what's happening out there. So submarine security. Maybe we should go back to the basics. You know what they do in a submarine when they're breached, right? You know what they do? When a hull breach happens? Exactly. And then Johnson, who sits on the wrong end of the lock, You know, he sees the water flooding and he bangs on the window. And on the other side are his 299 colleagues, and he says, "Sorry, Johnson, but you need, it's your ass, but we're going to be safe on this side." And you just accept the loss. And you give up Johnson. And after that happens, you rebuild that part. You move operation, you rebuild those kinds of things, because I believe that accepting this stuff will be definitely one of the next things that might be one of the next paradigms to be dealing with this in the same way. I would be happy to discuss why this is a stupid idea with any one of you. So I'm going to be here for the rest of the night to talk about that. Thank you.